the East, and I want to welcome everyone to our very exciting discussion today and the return, the third installment of the year of the Wells Fargo Beyond College webinar series. So excited to have folks joining us from all over the US and candidly all over the globe to be a part of a very important discussion, building a rock solid resume. I promise you, the information that you're going to receive today is going to be very, very helpful for you as you start making preparations for building a resume, maybe for our high schoolers that are on today, or starting to do some refining and critiquing of the existing resume that you have. And so we're excited to have everyone on with us today. We promise it will be an hour of really, really great content and then a number of action items, scholars, that you can utilize after the broadcast to be able to continue building from there. So with that said, you'll see here on the next slide, my contact information. Dewey Norwood, 23-year veteran here now of Wells Fargo. My daughter reminds me consistently, this is my Jordan year. So I think I'm supposed to win a championship this year, y'all, with the good work that's happening. So 23 years with the firm, and actually very privileged to work at our external engagement team, which is a part of our diverse segments, representation, and inclusion team. So you'll see my LinkedIn information here on the screen. Please go ahead and get connected in with us. We'd be happy to continue the conversations with things via LinkedIn. All right, next slide. We always love to cover on something topical relative to Wells Fargo. And we know we, excuse me, may have some folks that are joining for the first time. So maybe you don't know about our firm. Here are some things I would encourage you to highlight. $1.9 trillion in assets. 1 in 3 households, think about this. 1 in 3 households across the US has a relationship in some way, shape, or form with Wells Fargo. You see some other key facts down the bottom. 65 million plus customers. Again, the 1 in 3 households, 26 million mobile customers that are connecting with us through their wonderful devices and through technology. So I think this should just give you a sense of some of the work that's happening within our wonderful institution, and candidly, hopefully a place that you'll consider as a future place of employment. So you'll see this wonderful information here. Well, listen, let's jump into it relative to the runner program. As I said, we've got a full docket, and I promise you a power-packed group of presenters and internal partners here to help us have a wonderful, wonderful broadcast. We touched on about Wells Fargo to kick things off. Scholars, please remember, this is a safe space. We want you to know that you can ask and present questions throughout today's discussion. And please know, we will never read your name. We will never call your name out on the broadcast. But if there are questions that are top of mind for you, I can assure you, those are going to be the same questions that other scholars and other partners have. So please go ahead and utilize those. As a favor to us, please go ahead and utilize our best Zoom etiquette here. You know, many of you all are joining remotely, certainly, and many of you maybe have had online school years or other kinds of things. So you're very, very familiar with Zoom. So please utilize our best Zoom etiquette here with things. We do have the Q&A feature enabled. Please note, when those questions come into us, again, we will not read your name. Those questions will come in confidentially to our team throughout the course of the presentation with things here for today. So thank you for observing that. And as a reminder, please be sure to connect in with Katrina Breeze and the team as we are going into the Q&A portion of things. So excited to have our wonderful partners from APIA Scholars that are serving as our sponsors here for this year's series. And we're obviously conducting all of our wonderful programming through the great Zoom platform. So special thanks to Noel Harmon and to Katrina Breeze, who you'll see on the broadcast a little bit later today, and to all of the great partners that are helping us out. Listen, let's get into it. We're going to be talking today about first impressions, why those are lasting. We're going to touch on the do's. We're going to touch on the don'ts. But the real question is, what are recruiters really looking for? When that piece of paper arrives, or when that electronic email comes up with your resume attached, what exactly are they looking for? We're going to unpack all of those pieces today. And of course, you're going to leave with tips on building a rock solid resume. You can have an okay resume, you can have a decent resume, or boom, you can have a rock solid resume. We want you to leave with resources today that are going to help you win career opportunities. Yes, I said it, win career opportunities. Great to get to the medal stand, but I want to be on the top of the medal stand with receiving the awards with things. You're going to get those resources today from Ruth and from our other partners with things. When we get to the end of the call, we're going to give you the link for our survey so you can give us feedback. Again, please remember, you can access the playback of any of our prior webinars via the APIA Scholars YouTube channel. So visit their YouTube channel and you can access the playback. of any of our prior sessions, and of course today's session as well. And then get social with us. I always throw this one in. Please use the hashtag WFC Beyond College. Again, hashtag WFC Beyond College. Share this information with your partners on campus. Pass the information to the folks at your high school, or even maybe folks that have graduated or in industry that can use some of the benefits of what we're sharing today. Please hashtag pay it forward, again, using hashtag WFC Beyond College. All right, with that said, we're going to head on to our next items around things here for today. And again, these are the items around Zoom etiquette. Just remember to go ahead and keep your microphone muted. Go ahead and kind of disable your video with things. And then that way, again, at the appropriate times, if you need to bring up, you'll have the ability to do that. And then, of course, again, we got some of those features actually are turned off here from our perspective, but you can also customize. Let's say that you want to see all the speakers in one view, or you want to be able to see all the information side by side. Just go ahead and click on that icon in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, and that will take you to that information. And as we said earlier, don't forget, connect in with Katrina Breeze, kbreeze@apiascholars.org to submit any real-time questions that you would like to share throughout the course of the day. So that's where we're headed, and we've got 50 minutes or so to get all of these items pulled upon and worked upon with things. I want to, team, just take a moment and celebrate our featured presenter today, Ruth Armandades. Ruth is an exceptional leader within our talent acquisition sourcing team, and she focuses on all of the national programs. So Ruth and her team are engaging with students all across the US to learn specifically about career opportunities within our institution. Ruth and I have been close partners for a number of years. I've had the honor and the privilege of working side by side with her on a number of different projects, and I'm really excited, team, about the information that we're going to be sharing today. So Ruth, I salute you here from Charlotte, North Carolina. You're way across the country in Arizona. And Ruth, in a minute, I want to give you a moment to share your opening comments and jump into content. But if it's okay, I want to give you some metrics, Ruth, that came in. We had such impressive numbers. Scholars, you all have done it again. We are over 630 registrations for today. Ruth, that's obviously not because of me. They're here to see you, I know. But we are 630 plus registrations for today. And I do want to give a huge shout out to the University of Nebraska at Omaha, and also to Bowie State University. And also, I think a first timer here, Midwestern State was also in our top 3 here, relative to registrations from the colleges and universities. Relative to our higher education partners, the Hispanic Scholarship Fund won kind of the gold medal relative to referrals for today, but API Scholars was right behind them. So API Scholars, great job on getting really, really good numbers and good representation. And then from a perspective today, seniors, you all are in the house. We have more seniors on, Ruth, today than anyone else. But the sophomores, interestingly, came in second place here relative to our registrations around things. But we've got juniors on, we've got freshmen, and of course, a huge shout out to all of our high schoolers that are joining us as well. So Ruth, ton of content. We've got about 50 minutes to kind of pull on the strings and unpack a lot of the different elements of it on things. And so want to hand the reins over to you, my friend. And again, just want to salute you for all of the great work that you're doing. And scholars, I'll give a final note. We've got some additional partners you're going to hear a little bit later in the broadcast from Katrina Breeze. And we've also got our great friend, Ashley Rasmussen, who's working on the background with things for us for today. So Ruth, I think that's the setup. Anything that I missed that you want to touch on before you jump into your great content today?
You covered it all, and I think we have a great group of students joining us today.
I mean, strong numbers. So scholars, congratulations. And Ruth, want to hand the reins over to you. Certainly share a little bit of your background with the scholars. And I know that they're already catching up with you on LinkedIn. So my friend, the floor is yours, and we'll let you run into things from here.
Awesome. Thanks, Dewey.
You're welcome.
And hi, everyone. Welcome to our session, Building a Rock Solid Resume. So I am part of our National Programs and Partnerships team, and I've been with Wells Fargo a little bit over 6 years, but I've been in financial services for 25 years. And I think on the screen, you guys are seeing a poll come through. And we like to kind of kick it off with that poll just to get an idea. I know Dewey kind of already went through the numbers of, seniors are winning and sophomores, but I think we also want to see how many postgraduate law students we might see and how many freshmen we have out there. And if we have any high school students, for now, go ahead and select freshmen. That'll kind of give us an idea of kind of where you are in your path. So let's have you guys answer the poll, and then we'll close it and give it about another 5 seconds, and we'll close the poll. Awesome. Oh, we've got some freshmen and some postgraduates and some college students or college graduate students. So that's great to see.
Ruth, this is a good mix here across the board. We see good representation there. Wow.
Yep. All right. So that, that means we're going to expect a lot of questions. And I expect that we're going to go through the information pretty quickly, but I'm going to pause just to kind of make sure we get some questions answered as we go through. But I want to start off with understanding your resume, and know that your resume absolutely is your ticket into the interview process, but your resume will change multiple times as not only your job title changes, but your skill sets change. So I want to emphasize that many times when you build a resume, you're like, well, I've been in the same role for 5 years. My title hasn't changed. I don't need to refresh my resume. Yes, you do, because in those 5 years, things have changed, your skill sets have changed. So you definitely want to make sure that you're taking a look at that. And we call it your first impression and your ticket to the interview. But I also want you to think of your resume as, kind of your calling card when you are networking. There are times when you are going to be formally applying to roles, and then there's going to be times when you're networking with people and they're like, hey, shoot me your resume. I'd love to take a look at it. Even if you are networking and not in a formal application process, that resume definitely still needs to be polished, because you don't know who they're sharing it with, and they may be sharing it with the deciding folks on the team that are actually looking to build out their team, looking to, for some talent that they've asked their network to send over to them. So know that whether it's through a formal interview process or just sharing your resume through a network, that is your ticket. Okay, so first impressions count, and you want to make sure that that experience is relevant and that it conveys career advancement. So we've had some situations where students say, well, I've been at the same job since I was in high school, and, they've been flexible with me all through college. So, is it okay that I only list that one job? Absolutely, because guess what? Not only does it show that you've got stamina and you're staying and there's retention value there, but it also shows that, look, if you started off at McDonald's and you were, working the drive up, and you've been there for 4 years, you've likely worked quite a few different roles within that environment. So it shows some career advancement, some progression, and that retention value is invaluable to employers. When I look at a resume, and I'm looking at a resume that has someone that has had 4 jobs, but I see a resume where somebody has had 1 job for 4 years and they've been rock solid in that work experience, that resume actually may hold more value than the person that has had multiple employers, because I'm going to look at it as, okay, let's see, is there some career progression? Are there some skills that this person has gained and advanced within their organization, versus maybe somebody that could be a job hopper, and I'll call that out because sometimes there are job hoppers, or maybe somebody who just has had different opportunities through internships or seasonal work, right? So recruiters will take a look at that, but don't be discouraged by like, gosh, I only have 1 employer. I don't know if I should list it. And is that gonna look bad that I only have 1 versus 4, okay? So know that recruiters will definitely look at that. So if we go on to the next screen, I'm gonna talk about a little bit about the kind of the different components of what a resume should have and what we look for. So I'm going to do a quick little exercise with you, and I'll give you a tip. Recruiters typically will spend less than a minute looking at a resume. So many of you are thinking, gosh, in a minute, they're kind of evaluating me. Well, if you all are looking at your screen now, it's probably going to take you a minute to go through these different components, right? Okay, so they're looking at font size. Is it consistent? Is my information in chronological order? Grammatical errors? My personal information. Do I have my address? Are they going to be able to contact me? Am I conveying when I'm going to graduate? Do I have an email address, and is it a professional one? We'll talk about that too. You know, am I listing my work experience? Am I listing work study and internships? Am I listing my campus and volunteer activities, scholarships, and any recognition? That took a minute to just go through it. So as a recruiter who is very accustomed to looking at resumes, they're looking for things very chronologically. I'm looking at format. I'm looking for typos. If I have a situation where I have 100 resumes, the first typo that I see, I automatically put that resume to the bottom of the list. I may or may not come back to that resume because many times you will notice that a job description talks about attention to detail. So sometimes if I know the attention to detail or the typos that I caught right away, I may not go back to that resume again. So now you've knocked yourself out, right? So know that a recruiter very quickly goes through those resumes to knock out some students.
So Ruth, this is Dewey. I have to jump in on this one. If I heard you correctly, you said one typo gets you from the top of the stack where you are potentially to the bottom of the stack.
That is correct.
Spelling a
And
company's
sometimes
name
we
wrong.
don't go back to the bottom of the stack.
Wow. Wow. Attention to detail. You touched on it. That really just jumped out to me. Really, really jumped out. Wow. Okay. Attention to detail there. It sounds like it's pretty important.
Very important, not only because, especially if you're going into an entry-level role, not only is because typically you're going to be tasked with assignments of, helping support to create presentations, maybe reviewing documents. So maybe you're going to be in a support role where that attention to detail is really, really comes into play. Wow. And a manager says, hey, I'm handing you this work, clean it up, come back to me, give me a final review, because that manager doesn't have time to go through every single line, right? So they're going to rely on somebody who has that attention to detail. And that one piece can knock someone out very quickly.
Thank you for that point. We'll hold on to that. We'll hold on to that.
Absolutely. I want to talk a little bit about job hopper versus individuals that have multiple work experience. So know that if a recruiter knows the difference between a job hopper and a seasonal, individual that is doing seasonal work. So sometimes we may see a pattern where this person every 2 months is, changing jobs. And that we can see that pattern very differently based on the dates, right? So if I see somebody who maybe is doing seasonal work for 2 months in December and January, I know that obviously they're working kind of the Christmas rush, versus somebody that maybe I see, well, they only worked it in March and April, or maybe I look and see, oh, they worked it in January and February, and straight into March, this person left, then they found another job in May. So sometimes the recruiter might be like, oh, did they leave right around spring break when they couldn't get the time off? And then they worked for 2 months, and summer came and they had another, opportunity to travel. So if we're seeing certain patterns, absolutely, that could be cause for concern. So be cautious of that. Okay. Internships, we know they're usually anywhere from 10 to 15 weeks. So we know it's going to be a very short time of window. So make sure that you do list it as an internship, because that will call out, this is why it ended, right? It wasn't a termination. It wasn't a job hopping situation. It was truly an internship program. If you are working seasonal work, it's always, always nice also to say seasonal, right? Even if the recruiter may know that it's Christmas hiring or maybe a seasonal job in the summer, because sometimes, students may not find an internship, but they work a summer job, then make sure you list that, right? It's a seasonal job. You're going back to school. There isn't a bad reason why you left the role, right? It is truly a seasonal role. So you want to make sure that you're very cognizant of that when you are updating your resume and updating the dates. The other thing that I want to make sure that you are listing is month and year, right? So if someone lists 2019 to 2020, that doesn't mean that the recruiter is going to assume that you had a full year of work experience. On the contrary, we're going to assume that you likely probably worked at the end of 2019 to somewhere in 2020, and you're hoping that the recruiter will take that as a full year experience, and they won't, okay? Based on the candidate pool, and it is a competitive environment out there right now, they will say, okay, I can validate this person has a full year's work experience. This person I can kind of assume they worked some months in 2019 and some months in 2020. So since I necessarily can't validate it, and quite frankly, a recruiter is not going to put down the phone, their work and call you to verify, they're going to put you to the bottom of the list. So dates are important. Make sure that you are using the month and year when you're listing your years of experience. Campus and volunteer work comes extremely helpful, especially if you're a high school student or have limited work experience. You're taking, campus volunteer work, right? So maybe you are volunteering for an organization on campus and you're leading projects, you're leading teams. Make sure you list that. Maybe you're volunteering through your church or a nonprofit organization. Make sure that you list that. Especially if you are applying for an early talent program, many times they will take education in lieu of work experience. So you want to make sure that you're listing all the things that you're doing on campus and off campus, because that will come into play when a recruiter's thinking about, okay, do I interview Dewey that has, maybe three years of experience, or do I interview Ruth that has 2 years, but look at all the leadership experience that she has based on maybe she's captain of, her sports team, maybe she's, vice president of the finance team on campus. Even though I may have less work experience, I've got leadership experience. And Dewey didn't list any work experience, but he's got 3 years. If the minimums, you've met them and you've both met the minimums, the resume with leadership experience is actually going to be given more consideration than somebody that doesn't have leadership experience or volunteer or campus activities.
So Ruth, again, this is Dewey. You had some buzzwords there that, that jumped off to me. I heard you say validate. Let's talk about that. If it is on your resume, it is fair game. I think I've heard you use an iteration of that before, and it needs to be accurate. Give us 30 more seconds on that one, if you would, my friend. That one's important.
Absolutely. So we want to make sure that we can validate that it's truly experience. So don't just list a million things that you signed up for and like, oh, I'm going to go and volunteer, so I'm going to list all these organizations. Make sure that you're truly doing the work, because that's going to come and be reflected in your responses, right? The recruiter or a hiring manager might say, okay, I see here that you led teams with maybe the Red Cross, maybe with your church. Tell me about that. It will come back to you. So make sure you know that you're going to be asked about it. You got to make sure that you can speak to it. If you're hemming and hawing, it's not going to show well. And the recruiter will right away know that obviously it wasn't true experience. It was just, I'm affiliated with this organization, so let me list it. Make sure that you're not only listing affiliations, but you're listing, organizations that you're truly actually engaged in working with.
Very good. Should be able to tell a story about the work that you did in that role, in that opportunity with that organization, and the value that you added, it sounds like there. So not just adding it on there. So forgive me, again, I'm going to continue to chime on these, but validation is critical. And again, also, if it's on the resume, you may want to call for a reference, or you may want to confirm other areas of that. I see your head nodding. I'm assuming that these are things that you and your team work on.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, not every employer does references, but there's also that opportunity that, if students that are applying to the roles are maybe coming from the same candidate pool, you're looking at a resume and maybe it's the same school, maybe they're listing the same organizations, and, we're able to see, okay, wait, this person's saying they're leading these teams and this person's leading this team. Oh, let's see how that comes across in the interview, right? So recruiters definitely look at certain patterns. And we certainly validate it during the interview process. So you want to make sure, obviously, you put your best foot forward, but you're also able to speak to that experience. You will be called on it.
There you go. Yeah. So scholars, good information. Keep the Q&A. We see lots of questions coming in. Let's keep rolling through. Ruth, I know you've got a lot more content. Please continue.
Yeah, let's go on to the next slide real quick. Let's talk about some do's and don'ts, right? So very quickly on the do's. And, as we go through I'm going to actually share a screen where it has some action words, some verbs that you want to make sure if you're ready, take a snapshot of those action words, because you want to make sure that the resume is set apart from others by making sure you're using strong verbiage, that you are at least having more than one individual, at least two, Don't ask your mom and dad to review it unless, look, they're professional in reviewing resumes, or they do hiring as well. And I say mom and dad are going to be kind to you, right? They're going to say, great job, I think it looks great. Ask someone that's going to be critical and be open to that feedback, because you want to make sure that it's someone that says, tell me about this. And maybe have someone that is going to say, okay, you listed, this organization, what are you doing with them? Because they're probably going to ask you. So make sure that it's someone that's going to give you some strong and critical feedback on it, and be ready to switch it up. Okay. Now you need to refresh your resume at least every semester, because maybe it's project work that you've done through a class, maybe it's work that you've done with work study. Your skills are constantly changing and you are adding to those. So make sure that you are refreshing that resume. Your resume should not be a one and done, right? So we might think, well, I've updated, I had someone review it, I know it's perfect. It should be constantly be changing, and you should be adding to that. Make sure that your information is correct and that we're able to contact you. Many times we get emails bouncing back to us. Maybe we're sending out a quick email to those that have applied saying, okay, here are the next steps. I need you to, do, maybe some recruiters will use an auto scheduler, right? Where they send out a blast email and saying, we're going to schedule you on these spots, select your positions or your time slots. If that email comes back to us and they've got so many students, they may not follow back up. So make sure you're checking your inbox, you're checking your junk mail. And then on the email address, make sure it's a professional email. Okay, look, you may have a funny, email handle for your friends and family. If you're applying to roles, make sure you're not using that same funny, handle. Make sure it's professional. I highly recommend, maybe your first initial and last name, or just your first and last name at whether it's Gmail, or maybe you're using your campus, email. Make sure that you keep it professional. You don't want to be remembered for the wrong reasons. Okay. We're going to be showing you kind of a format of different kind of a good resume and an even better resume in just a bit. So make sure that you save your resume and then you save it as a PDF. Okay. Once you upload it to a company, certainly, we get Word documents all the time, but a PDF really ensures no one's changing your information. It is saved in a PDF format. And many times the recruiters have a preference for opening up as a PDF, especially if they're downloading, resume books and sending those resumes over to the hiring manager. It views better. So make sure we highly recommend it's a PDF. Okay. Let's go on next to the don'ts. Okay. And these don'ts may seem like, really, does it really matter? Don't use paragraphs, right? So sometimes somebody will do a whole paragraph of all their skill sets, bullet point your skill sets, be consistent and read them out, and make sure that you're using present or past tense. If you're currently doing it, then it's a present tense. If you did that last semester, you did that last year, then it is past tense. Okay. So anything that is currently chronologically should be present. Anything that you've done in the past, make sure that you are using the correct past tense verbiage. Don't fluff, okay? Absolutely. I'll kind of show you what white space means on a resume, right? So the more white space you have on a resume is a more junior resume. We've all been there. It'll gradually fill up, but there are ways to fill it up. And then also, don't use a one size fits all resume. There are templates out there that people are like, okay, I'm going to use the template. You would be surprised. Somebody forgets that they used a template and they don't necessarily erase all the others. I've had resumes that we receive where the template is sent and then at the bottom it says, additional, and they forgot to delete that box. So we know they were using a template. And then of course, it's just not a professional look. We also want to encourage you to avoid using color, graphics, and pictures, okay? Usually we will see graphics and pictures the junior experience. As you get older in your experience, we don't see that as much, but we still see a lot of color. So do not use multiple fonts, do not use color. Okay. The only time that there should be color in your resume is usually if it's a hyperlink to maybe your LinkedIn profile, your email, but it should not be, kind of jarring to the individual who's reading it. And the other piece to it, guys, we're going to switch it up to a very basic, black and white version when we print it. Recruiters do not print in color, so it loses its effect anyways. So avoid color at all costs. Do we have any questions coming through?
We've had a couple that have come in, some that have been focused on the LinkedIn topic, whether it was okay to include the LinkedIn information there. So scholars, thank you for submitting that. Another one that jumps off for me, Ruth, what if you're in a creative industry? What if you're an artist, or what if you are a photographer and you want to spotlight those things? If you can't have the color, you can't have the great iconography on something that you build, how do you spotlight those things in another way? Does it come in your CV, in other spaces? Give us 30 seconds on that one, my friend.
That's a great call out. So certainly there are some exceptions to the rule depending on the industry, but there's also ways where maybe you can, if you're highlighting your work, maybe you've created some web pages, maybe you've created some graphics. Certainly you could maybe attach a hyperlink to that information, right? So if you're listing your bullet points and say, hyperlink to the web pages that you are, as long as those web pages are shareable, right? If you have created a web page for a company you work for and that's proprietary information, obviously you're not going to be sharing that on your resume. So some industries certainly do, right? If you are applying to maybe a graphic artist role, maybe something in marketing, they may call out that in the job description and say, please provide a sample of your work, right? So then that is appropriate. But for all other roles that do not call out for that experience or asking for samples of your work, then you're not going to put that on your resume. A LinkedIn profile is certainly acceptable to put on your resume. Some organizations do certainly look at that to kind of go out. Now, if you're going to make sure this is one thing, if you're going to create a LinkedIn profile that you're going to add to your resume, make sure then you go back to your profile and that it matches your resume.
It's got to be up to date.
It has to be up to date.
Yes.
So if your resume says one thing, profile says something else. Guess what? Now that recruiter pause and go, okay, let's put him to the bottom of the list, and I may come back, I may not come back, right? They're going to kind of continue on in their resume review. So you have to do the homework of making sure that they match. Okay.
I love where you've gone around this. And again, I'm just imagining that LinkedIn profile that's on there, scholars, as folks are pointing there, same rules will apply. You've got to make sure that you've got it. And again, we went with our business attire today. When you see the team, you're going to see us all with business attire, again, based upon the content. That needs to be the place for a business photo, not one of the more casual ones and some of the other elements there. And maybe we'll touch on those. Again, I know this is a 1-2 punch, obviously this month with resume and then interviewing here at the end of the month. So we may pull on some of those other strings a little bit later on around things. So, wow, good stuff. Lots of great do's, lots of great don'ts. Again, scholars, remember, you'll get the playback, so you'll be able to go back and review these in greater detail. So Ruth, keep rolling. And I know we got Q&A right around the corner.
We got Q&A.
Yes.
We're at the home stretch. And then lastly, guys, don't copy and paste your resume into the application portal for that employer. Your bullet points may come up as asterisks. Maybe you used a different fonts that may come back as different characters. So PDF is the format that is preferred by employers. It is truly appreciated. So upload the PDF versus copy and paste. It may seem easier, like let me just copy and paste and drop it in. Nope. Avoid that, because on our end, it doesn't come off as a clean resume. It comes up with a bunch of symbols and different graphics. So avoid that at all costs. Let's go on to the next screen. And this is where I want you guys, if you're ready, take a screenshot and look at that. These are the action words that you should be thinking of using, okay? So if you're leading a project, you're sharing the project, maybe you're responsible for change management or maybe communications, right? So did you author, did you brief, did you co-author things? There's very, very big difference in the verbiage that you use that certainly distinguish you from I created versus I authored, right? I attained, I achieved versus the results were, right? Those are very different. Those action words will definitely distinguish you. So take a screenshot if you want. And then we're going to move on to the resume, because I'm going to give you guys just a really quick kind of job description versus resume and things to think about. So we've talked a little bit about the resume, and I want you to think of these 3 things before you actually hit apply and before you even update that resume, okay? When you are applying for a role, and even if you think your resume is ready, before you apply, I want you to think about what are the requirements for the role? What are the years of experience that are required for it versus desired? So make sure that you meet the requirements, make sure that your resume reflects the years of experience, so don't be vague, and then make sure that you're highlighting any desired qualifications. So if they're calling out, maybe certifications, maybe bilingual, maybe Excel, maybe some Python, maybe whatever those technical skills are, make sure that you're highlighting those, because although they're desired, that also means that there's going to be a large pool of candidates that may be required. So they will likely be looking at not only required, now desired. So make sure that you do that. And then that means you're going to switch up that and update that resume before you apply. So if we go on to the next slide, it'll show you kind of a quick overview of a resume. And just the change in format makes a big difference. So this is an entry-level resume that many of you who are on campus or just going through college or getting ready to graduate may have. So the first resume lists your experience. Really good resume. If I looked at it, very, very good. On the other flip side, right, of your screen, you see this exact same resume with the experience. The very slight changes were the formatting. So they changed their margins to use up the entire page of that resume. That gives you more actual space on that page to put in a few different bullet points and actually expand on the bullet points. So if you look at the bullet points of the first resume, very basic bullet points. And then if you look at the bullet points on the second resume, they elaborate a little bit more. So many times the formatting of the resume can actually be very impactful. You are listing the exact same work experience, but it's how you format it and it's how you articulate it on that resume that's going to distinguish you. So this is a copy of kind of a before and after of an entry-level resume. And then the next slide will give you a before and after of a professional resume. And that, I think once you get into a professional resume, that makes a huge, huge, huge difference on how you format it. Before people would say, well, I need to make sure I have a strong objective. As you grow in your career, objective statements are usually actually no longer used. Now people do a professional summary where it gives you the highlight bullet points. I've got 20 years of this experience. I've got leadership, project management. So now the objective statement has been changed and swapped out for a professional summary. So as you see again, they change the margins of their resume. They use the entire page, and that completely gives you an opportunity to elaborate on your bullet points. You're now not doing one-liner bullet points. Your bullet points sometimes will be, 1 to 2 line bullets. So those slight changes on your resume make a difference, and that's what recruiters really absolutely take a look at. That definitely sets you apart. So I want to give you guys just a quick kind of like a 2-minute overview. The next slide will tell you about Wells Fargo application process. So if we go on to the next slide, Wells Fargo, unless you're applying for an entry-level role into an early talent program, you want to make sure that you're looking at qualifications. So for this particular role, they're looking for 1 year of experience. Now, if you are applying for an early talent program, you would see the verbiage or education in lieu of. So know that you want to make sure that you get very familiar with the requirements. You may have that 1 year of work experience, and absolutely we encourage you to apply. But if you don't have it, then we want you to make sure that you're looking at those early talent programs because they'll take education in lieu of. On the next slide, it talks about the desired skills. So I mentioned the desired skills. Look, we tier our candidates as our top tier candidates are going to be those that have the required and desired. And then our second tier candidates maybe don't have all of the desired, but may have some. So we start tiering candidates, and depending on the number of openings that we have, the number of interviews that we're conducting, that's going to also determine, I'm going to start off with my top tier candidates going through to a phone interview. and then my second tier. And if that top tier did really, really great, and I have no need to go to my second tier, then my second tier does not get a phone screen. You met qualifications, but I had stronger candidates, and there's no need for me to go into that second pool. So that's why it's very, very important that you look at required and desired, and you're highlighting both on the resume. Don't just bank on, well, hey, it's only asking for a year and I got 5 years. Well, it's only asking for a year, but maybe the second candidate has a year of experience. They meet all the desired, okay? So make sure that you don't bank on only years of experience, you bank on the desired. I strongly recommend you are looking at that job description, that you're looking for keywords. You know, I once had a job posting where it talked about like Six Sigma, project experience, budgeting. And I had an individual who said, but I had that experience. And I said, you know what? When I did control find, not once on your resume did I see the word budget, and not once did I see Six Sigma. Okay. And they were like, oh, but I'm currently working on it. Then you could list, you know, Six Sigma certification in progress. You know, I would have considered that individual and had a conversation, but because they didn't list it, and when I did, you know, a control find just to even find those words, and those were like the key buzzwords of that job description, you know, that individual didn't get considered. So you want to simplify it, make it easy. You want to make sure that you are rising to that top of that list for that candidate pool, so that I don't put you at the bottom of the list, because that bottom of the list may not get a second look. So let's pause there and see, what questions do we have? And I hope you guys are ready for your questions, because at this point, if we go down to the next slide, we are ready. You are ready for that career opportunity. And I know, Dewey, you're going to be sharing some resources as well.
We've got some pieces there. And so, Ruth, thank you. A ton of really, really good information that's come in. I'm also going to ask Katrina Breeze to come on screen here now with us, as well, as we see the fireworks going off there, scholars, as you have won those wonderful career opportunities. So congratulations. Katrina, great to see you. Hoping things are going well there for you in the Virginia, Maryland area, and business attire there for today. Very apropos, certainly for our topic around things. So thank you. I want to give you a couple of moments to walk through some of the questions that have come in real time, and also some of the pre-submitted ones. And then I may jump in with one or two here as well that have come in. So Team Katrina is one of our master project managers behind this wonderful work, and actually leads development and external engagement for APIA scholars. So trusted partner. And Katrina, we're always privileged to have an opportunity to work with you and with your entire team. So let me give you the microphone for a couple of minutes here. We've got still, 10 or 15 minutes or so. So let's go through as many of these items as we can. And we've got a ton to discuss. So please, Katrina, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Dewey. It's a pleasure to be here today. And it's really given me a lot of flashbacks to when I was really early in my career and trying to revamp my own resume and think about how to fill in all that experience I want to say I have, but I just graduated college, or I'm a senior in college, and how do I do that? Yeah. And so I guess I'll start with that particular topic that has come in, a variety of different questions have sort of touched on that. And that is around when you have really limited work experience, and Ruth and I were talking about this a little bit before today's session, how can you really highlight some experience or skills, knowledge, and abilities that we all have that maybe have come in from a combination of volunteer, college clubs, or part-time jobs on an entry-level resume.
Yep, absolutely. So Katrina, one of the things is, and for students, think about what are the skills that you're using, whether it's on a project team for a class assignment, volunteer work. And then I've also had individuals who don't list all their work experience because they feel it's not relevant to the role that they're applying to. I'll use the example that I was sharing with Katrina. I had a student that I interviewed, and at the end I said, any other experience or information you'd like to share with me? And this student went into this whole, it felt like a dissertation on basically he owned his own business. He ran a landscaping business, and he got referrals from realtors in the neighborhood. He would go in and clean up, sell homes that were going for sale and make sure they were ready for sale. He actually had his own crew. He had other students working with him. He did his own marketing. He was budgeting, doing payroll. And I asked him, why did you not include that? And he said, well, that's not relevant to banking. And I said, you're owning your own business. You're running marketing campaigns. You are building relationships. All that experience is relevant. So many times you may think, well, I don't have the experience because I've only been volunteering. So through volunteer, you've got leadership. Obviously, maybe you are maybe how you coordinate other volunteers. So highlight the leadership. Maybe through projects, right? You're managing schedules, you're managing deliverables. So especially when you're a college student, have that limited experience, I highly encourage you to apply to roles that will take education in lieu of, because employers and campus recruiters, they know that. They're looking for that type of experience. It's how you articulate it. We can train you on the financial services. Companies can train you on their products and services. They're looking for that aptitude. So make sure that you don't shy away from being able to sell those skills on the resume.
If you've done it, take credit for it. Take credit for it. So,
absolutely.
Katrina, may I pinhole in here just on a brief one that's coming as well? And this, I think, is a really helpful question. We talked about it earlier. We know we have high schoolers on. We certainly know we have lots of our college scholars on and college partners from across the globe. But we also have seasoned professionals that join these calls as well, Ruth. So talk a minute about any recommendations for someone that's maybe returning to the workforce. Maybe they had 5 years where they were staying at home, or maybe they were just out of industry, maybe caring for a family member, things along those lines. How do you reflect those important components on your resume as you're going back, maybe re-entering the workforce in some way, shape, or form? Please touch on that if you would.
Yeah, absolutely. And for that, you want to look at also transferable skills, right? You might say, well, I'm changing industries. So how do I apply to this job? It sounds interesting. You got some things that I want to work on, and you've likely done it. Okay, those are transferable skills. Just this morning, I was having a conversation with somebody who said, well, this talks about strategy. I've really only been working on marketing campaigns. And I said, that's all about strategy. Those are all transferable skills. So although there's been a break in employment, guess what? Each time there was a campaign, you guys were talking about strategy on what's the right communication, what's the timeline, who's your audience, understanding how is it going to hit, how is it going to land. All of that is strategy. You just have to think about it differently. So you might not say, well, I only did the copywriting on it. No, you were not. You were part of those conversations. So those are all transferable skills. If you've had a large gap in your employment, there are also organizations that do re-entry glide programs. We have one of those as well with Wells Fargo. Look for those opportunities. And then also, if you are kind of feeling a little bit, nervous about your skill set, do a little refresher. There's nothing wrong with doing some online Googling of, hey, let me refresh my Excel skills. Let me refresh my PowerPoint skills. Let me refresh some skills that I haven't used. And then also, once you get to the point that you are actually applying for jobs, it is a good time for you to kind of have an exercise of like, let me list all the skills and things that I was doing, because we tend to forget. You're like, wait a minute, I was doing budgeting. I was being accountable for multiple deliverables and timelines. So make sure you make a list of things that need to get refreshed and things that we need to remember that we already were doing, and add those to the resume. Look at the job description, take the verbiage that the job description has, and ask yourself, is this highlighted in my resume, right? So if a company is really focused on maybe philanthropy work, what kind of work did you do in that arena? If they're looking for projects, they're looking for budgeting, accounting, whatever those skills are, try to make sure that you are using the verbiage in that job description.
Excellent. Ruth, thanks for that. And special thanks again, scholars, for these questions that are coming in. Katrina, let's keep going. We're going to keep taking these for a little while. Let's keep rolling.
Sure, of course. So at API Scholars, which is the organization I work for, we support diverse students who are first generation college students And I appreciate the tip. Don't give your resume to your parents. They might be a little kind to you, but try to see if you've got some professionals in your life who could give a good critical eye. Now, you gave some really great tips about don't use color or, too many graphics and fonts and things like that. But I've gotten a lot of questions about how you really make your resume stand out. Whether you are a diverse candidate or have, certainly you want to ensure that your personality or your unique qualities are going to shine through professionally on a resume. Do you have some tips on how to do that?
Yeah, I will tell you, recruiters are very good at being able to identify the organizations that you're aligned to. So if you are aligned to a particularly diverse organization, then my gosh, if you do not put it on a resume, that is like a crime. You've got to make sure you highlight that. And then the way that you come up through and kind of distinguish yourself is absolutely, I want you guys to bring your true self to any organization that you apply to. But quite frankly, a recruiter's looking for the professional resume of, did it hit all the bullets that I'm looking for? Typos, experience, affiliations, volunteer work, merit, and scholarships. And I say merit and scholarships because that also is a very telling to a recruiter, right? Someone who's getting merit recognition and scholarships obviously is an individual that has put a lot of work towards their education. They've got some work ethic behind it. That's also kind of a telltale for recruiters. So make sure that you're listing those accolades, those you've earned them, you worked hard for them. So make sure that personality shines through, right? If you're going to list hobbies, try to list hobbies that are, look, somebody says, well, what's a professional hobby? How do I distinguish that? And how do I, you probably want to list things that will show some tenacity, some hard working, right? I had somebody who listed on his resume, and ironically, I knew the individual, and I was like, take that off. And I know he was trying to be funny, but he said a Netflix influencer, right? And I said, what does that mean? Are you a couch potato? And he's like, well, I share this, the great shows that I'm watching with other people, and I've kind of created this community, and I want to speak to it. I said, you know what? That comes across to me as just somebody who loves to watch Netflix. No harm done. Look, I love it too, right? But you want to be cautious of what are your hobbies that you're listing, right? So look, if you're an avid, tennis player, you're an avid horseback rider, you love, visiting museums, try to think of things that people will find some connection to. Don't try to be funny. Your resume is not the time to be funny and humorous. You will build that relationship, and actually don't do it in the interview also. Don't try to be too funny in the interview. But you will find that through networking. There's opportunities for you to share your personality. The resume truly just needs to be a great first impression. Once you're in the door, once you build a relationship and a rapport, then you can show that a little bit more better.
Thanks, Ruth. I have some questions from some seasoned professionals that are logged in here today. And one of them is around, this particular person has over 20 years of experience, but, we've gotten some questions several times about how important is it really to keep that resume to one page. I love the tip about the professional summary, which I think can certainly speak to how many years of experience, but what's really going to be the essentials when you try to keep that resume to one page? And is it ever okay to have it beyond one page?
And team, for the record, my resume, 19 pages long. You're going to have to refill your printer cartridge in the vein of not being funny. You got to refill your printer cartridge with ink. Now, Katrina, I'm glad you brought this up.
Yes.
Ruth, it's on you.
Yes, thank you for asking that. Okay, so let me first say, disclaimer, your one-page resume really needs to be for somebody that has 10 years or less experience, right? Once you hit the 10 years and more, then absolutely it is okay to have a two-pager, no more than 2 pages, okay? Do not go more. Now, if you are just inching up into the second page and you've got like a page and a quarter, then you need to do some wordsmiths and go back to, okay, what do I need to change? Because you either need to be a solid one-pager, or a solid 2-pager. And even if you're going to go into the 2-pager, I actually caution, don't go to like a page and a half and just barely kind of getting, make sure it's like a good strong 1.75 pages, if not a full 2 pages. Because anybody who has 10 years plus experience, absolutely, it will go into that 2-pager. But if you're going into the like, oh, it just cut off and well, Ruth said a 2-pager is okay because I need to get those last 2 things in. Those last 2 things probably could have been reworded and it's a solid 1 page. So formatting, play with your margins, play with the font size, play with, are you using way too much spacing? So there are ways to obviously make sure that you just don't have an overlap of 2 lines into a second page. But if you've got 10 plus years, 20, 25 years, absolutely a 2-pager is appropriate.
And Ruth, just real talk here. Mine is really 2 pages, not 19. But you can also explore some of those other pieces in your CV or in your cover letter, or hold some of those other elements maybe for interviews once you actually get into those either phone screens or Zoom interviews or the face-to-faces as those are happening. So you can go into some of those things, I think, at a later date and time, it sounds like.
Absolutely. And the fact that a recruiter spends less than a minute really kind of is a telltale.
That's
Don't
amazing.
write a dissertation, guys. Cover letters, look, unless you're a great wordsmither and you're not going to have any typos or grammatical errors, run-on sentence, it better be a strong cover letter, because I've seen cover letters that also knock you out, right? Wow. We think we use a spell check, and we're like, I use spell check and we're good. And then all of a sudden you're like, wow, look at all these run-on synonyms. They use to instead of TWO, instead of TOO. There are things that spell check does not catch. Yeah. So please make sure that you're cognizant of that.
Important. Katrina, let's maybe take one more. I know we're coming right up at the top of the hour with things, but sure, let's give it to you. Put the pressure on you, my friend, to come up with the last jewel to encapsulate, probably 100 questions that have come in, scholars. So thank you all so much. Katrina, please.
Sure. So one last question is really being able to, how do you artfully present or talk about gaps in employment? We talked a little bit about some job hopping and you being able to discern a pattern as a recruiter. But how, when you have just that minute to take a look at a resume, what do you look for to be able to really see past or get an explanation for gaps in work history?
Yep. So sometimes I'll look for if somebody wrote the word displaced, right? Look, sometimes a short gap in your employment is because due to a displacement, nothing out of your control. So if it is due to a displacement, use the word displacement in that particular gap. That is automatic forgiveness, right? The recruiter's like, okay, they worked there for 2 months and then they hopped on to the next one for, to the next role because it was a displacement. Or maybe you're working through a temp agency, absolutely appropriate. And obviously we have, not only a younger audience, but an experienced audience. For the younger folks, look, you're getting this advice early. Avoid those gaps by making sure that sometimes, look, we've all taken a role that we don't like. Hang in there as you're applying. You should be applying for your next role while you have employment, not while you're like, I got frustrated, left there, and now I'm like hitting the payment for work. Make sure that you are proactively looking while you're still employed. Always better than looking. And then if you do have those gaps, be transparent and honest. I had individuals who truly said, look, I've had transportation issues, and unfortunately, it's taking me two hours just to get to and from work. Sometimes things are best explained than trying to hide them. So be transparent and honest. Recruiters will work with you.
Very good.
Thank you, Ruth.
Katrina, the sand has run out of the hourglass here for our Q&A portion of things, but as is your custom, my friend, just a masterful job walking us through these items. And scholars and partners, what I'll ask you to do is, as we go to our closing items, again, Katrina, thank you so much for the great work here and for all that API Scholars is doing to help students along their higher ed journeys and into careers around things. I want to remind everyone, please get connected with Katrina via LinkedIn. Get connected in with Ruth via LinkedIn. We want to be able to continue the conversation and touch on other items that we didn't get a chance to address today. But it's interesting, as I look through a lot of the topics, we did cover so many of the pieces that were top of mind for folks. But if there are other things that we didn't get a chance to unpack or again, pull the string on, so to speak, please reach out to Ruth. She'll be happy to get connected in with you and continue the conversation. And remember, this is kind of a 1-2 punch. And you'll see here, we've got some details around the Beyond College webinar series. We'll cover off on these items lightning speed today. We've got 2 that are already available on demand. Again, please visit the API Scholars YouTube page to be able to access those. And we'll also have that information on our Wells Fargo YouTube page here in the very near future. But you can go ahead and access the playback. And of course, you'll be able to get the playback for today's wonderful session. But go ahead and join us again at the end of the month for the discussion around interviews. Again, you've gotten some pieces here. Now get that second piece of the puzzle as we connect in and discuss about interviews. We'll be spending some time in April on money management. In May, we'll be focusing around the gig economy. And then when we get into the remaining portion of the year with things, we're going to be talking about all kinds of topics. We'll be spending some time discussing the things around careers and salary versus value and other topics, as you'll see on the next slide, that we'll be touching in on. And so we'll continue on those topics, and we want this to continue to build throughout the course of the year. So the information that you're getting today, again, you're going to be able to use that. You're going to be able to mix that in with the salary versus value discussion in June, and add some of those components in when we talk about the career opportunities event coming up in July. And okay, how does this impact my decision making around student debt and building credit? And again, you see all of the great topics that we're going to be covering off between now and November. So this series is one that I would consider as additive, and things will kind of continue on from there. You'll note we have a wonderful survey link that's here, so you can actually utilize this. Special shout out to Barbara Scotland and to her amazing team from the meeting and events side of our firm that helps us out with our wonderful registration site and other information. And so please, we'll also include this with the playback, and you can access and share your feedback with us at any time via the survey link. So Barbara, thank you so much. We'll close on with these items here. Certainly perfect time to go ahead and get connected into our university programs area. Please connect in with the talent community. There's so many great things that Ruth and her team are managing. They're sending out content that's going to help you in your career development today, and is also going to propel you for your future. So please engage in those different areas. And of course, please make sure you're taking full advantage of resources like our wonderful Beyond College webinar series that you're joining today. And of course, things like tuition funding sources. With that said, we're right at the top of the hour with things. Don't want to keep you all any longer than promised. Don't forget to join us on March 25th here later this month for a wonderful discussion about preparing for success in your upcoming job interview. I want to again thank you, Ruth, for all the great information that you shared today. Katrina, thank you so much for all of your wonderful leadership. Barbara Scotland, thank you so much for all that you're doing. Andrea Vienna, who was on with us today. Of course, we got to shout out Karen Dizon and the team, and also Ashley Rasmussen, one of our great partners within the firm as well, who's helping out. We're really excited to deliver this series. Give us feedback, scholars, and please share the information with your classmates that couldn't join today, and then we'll continue the conversations from here. Please continue to stay safe. I know lots of folks are recovering from the storms and things that have happened very recently, but spring is right around the corner. Please continue to stay safe. Keep working diligently on the things that you're doing on your respective campuses and on your schools, and at your schools, better yet. And if there's anything that our team can provide for you, please do not hesitate to contact us. We look forward to seeing you later this month for a great discussion as we talk about job interviews. Everyone have a wonderful rest of your day and a great weekend. We'll see you next time. Good night, everybody.